Yuji and Mahito are the same.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
So much so that they might now share the same curse technique. I'd go as far as to say that Yuji now has what Mahito's curse technique would have become had he, not been sucked up by Kenjaku. Pause. With this soon to be revealed broken upgrade, Yuji will finally give Sukuna the biggest fight he's had since he's been reincarnated. And not only does Yuji potentially have multiple curse techniques right now, they're probably stronger than their original users. The parallel between Yuji and Mahito in their ideologies was a lingering theme throughout the Shibuya arc. It was a reality Yuji came to terms with by the end of his fight with Mahito. Yuji is just somebody doing as his instincts dictate by saving people and killing curses, just as Mahito is someone doing the same. His instincts just tell him to kill people instead of curses. That's really the only difference. So in that sense, he finally admitted that they were the same. But this video isn't about philosophical stuff like that. At least not today. What I want to talk about is something more recent in the manga that might have just confirmed that Yuji can now in fact manipulate his own soul just like Mahito now. Going even further, Yuji might be even better than Mahito ever was at using a technique like this.
I'm better! I am better!
By being able to manipulate his own body and soul to the point that he can use other sorcerers' curse techniques. More than likely I lost you there, but it's alright, I'm going to explain everything right now. At the end of chapter 247, we saw that just before Higuruma's apparent death, I say apparent death because we don't know if he died yet technically, he had somehow transferred his executioner sword to Yuji, which then appeared in a smaller form in his hand, leaving us on a super suspenseful final panel, showing Yuji within like freaking centimeters of piercing Sukuna. What makes the whole scene even more interesting is that just before all this, Higuruma thought back to a conversation he had with Kusakabe. It's just a simple two-bubble conversation, but the implications of it could not be more important. Kusakabe says, "Curses getting stronger post-mortem, I wouldn't call it impossible," to which Higuruma responds by saying, "If anything, I'd say that would match our general understanding of curses more accurately." Now, cursing can mean a lot of things in this conversation and in the series in general, if I'm being honest. Gege's never really been too specific with that phrase. We know that Akotsu's original Rika from Volume 0 was a result of him cursing Rika as a human, so Higuruma could have somehow manifested into a curse or a curse tool in the form of the executioner sword that Yuji now has, which is now apparently much stronger than the original if we take that prior conversation into account. It's not something we've ever seen before other than when Yorozu constructed that lightning curse tool for Sukuna. The name's escaping me right now, but I'm pretty sure you guys are going to correct me in the comments. But the stuff with Yorozu was only possible due to her curse technique. Her curse technique was construction, so she was able to do something like that, and it would make sense that after her death it would become such a powerful curse tool, since it technically could run off of post-mortem cursed energy. Also, sorcerers don't become curses if they're killed with Jujutsu, otherwise they'd return as vengeful spirits. Higuruma was killed with Cleave, which uses Jujutsu, so I don't think Higuruma would even be able to become a curse in this situation. I could be wrong with this stuff, so again, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But again, hey, he might not even be dead for all we know. The more likely scenario for me here is that Higuruma somehow transferred his curse technique along with his cursed energy to Yuji. If you notice, when Higuruma's sword disappears, a small cross-like mark appears on Yuji's hand just before he manifests his own executioner sword. It's possible that the mark serves as a curse mark of some kind, where it's imbued with the curse technique of the creator for a temporary period. This is actually a similar concept to the popular theory that Sukuna can access multiple curse techniques through the markings on his body. Some think each marking is a different curse technique he's somehow stolen from other sorcerers, or something along those lines. As Sukuna's vessel, Yuji would likely be able to do the same if he understood how. It has been mentioned in the past that Yuji is essentially a cursed object soaked in Sukuna's cursed energy. This is where we circle back to Yuji becoming Mahito 2.0 in certain aspects. If we're considering the rules of curse techniques, it's nearly impossible to control multiple curse techniques at once. Yuta is able to do it by using Rika as an external aid, and Kenjaku can use multiple because of the special conditions of his curse technique. Otherwise, multiple curse techniques would overload their brain, because we gotta remember that curse techniques technically operate and form in the right prefrontal cortex of the brain, but the important thing is that Yuji's external aid would be the marking, and he would use his ability to observe and manipulate his own soul to make it more compatible with Higuruma's own cursed energy and technique temporarily. He might have even straight up absorbed Higuruma's soul. If he could potentially swap them like we saw in chapter 222, then I wouldn't find it hard to believe that he could also pull them out and absorb them under some kind of super restricted conditions, like the sorcerer has to agree to give it up in the first place, because obviously Yuji can't just pull souls out of people's bodies willy-nilly. He would have done it to Sukuna already. And after all, in a past interview, Gege once said Yuji would likely absorb the remaining Cursed Womb death paintings in the form of cursed energy if he ever consumed them. So it's an idea the author himself has already contemplated. Speaking of death paintings, before all of this stuff with Higuruma even happened, we got this moment where Sukuna gets temporarily distracted by an incoming piercing blood, which he assumed was from Choso. Well, what I believe and a lot of other people suspect is that this is actually a piercing blood from Yuji. How is that possible, you may ask? Well, I pretty much gave you the answer just a second ago, man. Keep up. Several moments in chapter 220 heavily imply that Yuji had consumed the remaining death paintings that Choso had recovered. If you want full details on all that stuff, like how Yuji has blood manipulation and all that, just click the video at the end of this video. But anyway, if Yuji consumed the death paintings, he might have used the process Gege alluded to in his interview in order to absorb them and in turn use the blood manipulation technique. That's probably how Yuji was able to armor up his arms, similar to how Choso can with various parts of his body. And speaking of Choso, in chapter 240, after Noritoshi Kamo declared that he was withdrawing from this whole battle, Yuji thanked him for teaching him so much, since Choso can't teach for squat. Well, they're the only two sorcerers that use blood manipulation, so, you know, you see where I'm going here, right? Once Choso gave Yuji the death paintings, he used his new soul manipulation ability to absorb the energy and techniques of the death paintings. Then after manifesting the technique, Choso and Kamo taught him the finer details of how to use blood manipulation. This might actually be how Yuji healed the wounds he received from Sukuna's cleave earlier in chapter 247. I mean, dude had the left side of his body straight up blown off, so he had to deal with that somehow before joining the fight, right? Either he used blood manipulation to stop the bleeding, or he used soul manipulation to heal his wounds like Mahito used to. That's not even the most exciting part of all this though. Considering Higuruma opened the door to curses becoming stronger after one's death, Yuji might have versions of blood manipulation and the Executioner Sword that are stronger than we've ever seen. The whole idea of curses becoming stronger after someone dies is similar to the concept of post-mortem Nen from Hunter x Hunter, where someone's Nen ability can continue to take effect and even get stronger after the user's death. This tends to happen when the user is feeling extreme emotions or has a purpose they're driven to fulfill at the moment of their death, essentially fueled by intense desires. It's a phenomena that makes sense within the power system because Nen in Hunter x Hunter is heavily influenced by emotion and raw desire. In Jujutsu Kaisen, the Nen of this world is cursed energy, which is fueled by the negative emotions of humans. Like Higuruma said, something like this being possible falls right in line with our understanding of curses. Higuruma's burning desire to pursue righteous justice and atone for all the people he's killed at the moment he died fueled the technique and made it stronger. If Yuji's possible soul manipulation ability isn't the cause for the Executioner Sword hopping to him, at the very least it's due to Higuruma figuring out how to pass it on. Dude was built up to be as naturally talented as Gojo after all, so I wouldn't put it past him. Another underrated prodigy might be Yuji though, and his potential mastery of the soul can get traced back all the way to the early chapters of the manga, where Mahito points out that Yuji is his natural enemy because his body contains two souls. This meant he was naturally able to perceive the contour of the soul better than others. Really, it seems like Gege was building this up for a while now. At this point, Yuji might just be a cursed energy sponge for various techniques, and since he'll be fighting someone that has their own cursed technique mysteries going on, there's literally no telling what's gonna happen. Well, we'll find out soon, but until then, click on this video you see on your screen right now to learn about how Yuji got his blood manipulation and maybe even bone manipulation. I don't know, sounds like a pretty good video. I'll see you there.